emergency situation, the wall is unsafe, and it poses a danger to pedestrians and traffic. And if that is the case, then I would say the city should instantly contact the State Historic Preservation Division and ask for an expedited review of this project.
Right.
So I think that might be the proper course here. I'm not sure what, you might consider a conditional approval, you might consider tabling it with pending consultation with the State Historic Preservation Division. But if I hear what you're saying, then I wouldn't really wait. I would start that tomorrow, Ben, and see if we can get that process.
It is in motion already, and we do apologize. I mean, I don't know anything about the DOT stuff. I just take care of the buildings. Whatever happened with the opportunity of maybe having some help to make it better, I don't know about that. You can ask Mr. Tafoya, you can ask Mr. Rubio, all of you all. My job is to protect and preserve the buildings. But when there's an unsafe condition, we have to issue the red tags.
And we respect that.
Mr. Lopez, he saw me walking up to him, he says, "Here you go, Ben, with my process." Now, whatever's going on, I mean, and we know the rules with state preservation, but that road, we actually want to shut it down. Because I can't live with myself if somebody gets hurt. Somebody can be walking there at night, they can be partying at night, there can be a little kid. You know that building that got hit there, right down when it took out those pillars, remember? Mm-hmm. Some kid came around with the ice storm, and he slid, and he hit those
That was my
columns.
building.
That was your
That
building.
was my building.
And took out his columns, and we were able to repair it. If we get something sliding into that wall now and hitting it, and it happens in the winter and the building falls on top of them, and we had this meeting, we have these minutes, we have these recordings, and somebody gets hurt, we're gonna be in a world of hurt.
All that's understood.
And what I'm just saying is that all I care about is the safety of the citizens of Las Vegas. I do care about historic buildings, that's why we have the vacant building ordinance, but when the cost, the wall that faces Bridge and the wall that faces the south, they're just 2x4 walls. The only thing that's holding, all we have is one wall. This is fake, and this is fake in the back. You're not taking down 4 walls. We're just taking down the bad wall. What Mr. Lopez is going to do is he's going to keep the stone wall that's original, the 4th wall, that's original. That's going to be facing, like Mr. Elmo says, they're going to be still looking at that wall. That wall's still preserved.
Well, see, we don't know none of that.
They're not going to take down the whole building.
No,
We don't know none of that, see?
Yeah, it's on the
No,
packet.
we're not.
It's on the packet.
It's premature. I mean, it's just a sketch. It's
No,
a simple.
all we're taking down is this wall.
East wall.
These two walls are, when we have the movies, I'll just tell you this, Chairman and Board, when we had the movies come in and they brought in the casino movie, when they put in the Tumbleweed Theater and everything, they came and they wanted to latch on to that building. I stopped them. I said, do not touch that facade. There's nothing holding that wall. That wall is a false wall. The wall that you look at that's facing the bridge, that wall, you could push it over with your hands. So what we did is that the movie people, what they did is that they created a wall in front of that wall, and they held it down with sandbags. And I told them, do not touch that building, and they didn't. Because that building, you can't grab onto it.
If I could say a few words, I'm all about preservation too, and I hope I've demonstrated that to this board, and you guys all know what I do here in this town, and these historic buildings, I've been wanting to get a little more involved with them. So I'm all about preservation. I'm also a builder, and if you look at that structure, it's not salvageable. It really is not salvageable. So when this came before and I got the red tag, then again, highest and best use of that property started to play out. And that's what got us to the MOU and the discussion with the city, and also the benefits of the road and so on. So from a building standpoint, and from a builder standpoint, that wall I mean, it's a rock foundation underneath it. That wall's thicker than this desk right here. I couldn't have an engineer sign off on the structural integrity of that wall. So it's going to be very difficult, even from a construction standpoint, to preserve that wall. It can be done, and I'd be the first one to tell you also, if I had a good structure, I wouldn't want to demo the darn thing. But I don't. So if you look, and if you're familiar with the building, we're preserving the right side. So there's a facade, there's a building on Bridge Street. We're not taking the building away from Bridge Street. We're taking the east portion of that
So
building.
how much of the street are you widening?
The city is taking approximately 12, 15 feet, something like that. And then they're coming in with a 4-foot ADA sidewalk, so there's no ADA access right there, so they're improving that. Again, this all just boils down to public safety. I know it's a historic thing, I know it's a preservation thing, and I'm all about that. But I think what trumps that is the safety of the public. And I want to go on record here too. I'm trying to mitigate this problem. I'm the owner. I'm the one liable probably if that wall comes down.
Well, we appreciate that.
Okay, so we're trying to mitigate that through the city process. It happens to actually be a good benefit for the city schools, the West Las Vegas City Schools. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it, with the exception of the preservation part. And again, we can go through this process. The problem is that at a certain point, the city funds will not be allocated for it because the engineering can't be done. And there's a time constraint here. And then once you pass that, it's done. And then I'm gonna have a demo a wall with a nice big front yard area facing and the city's not gonna have any benefit to it at that point.
Chewbacca, you had something?
Yes, Chairman Garcia, if I could ask Carlos a question. Carlos, do you think there's a good way to temporarily stabilize that building? Just put a brace on it so for the next 90 days it's not going to fall down. This board and the council and the state have enough time to review your proposal?
Well, I mean, there's a way to do, of course, absolutely. It'll be a big cost. We'll probably have to put some I-beams, drill them in the ground, and shore up that wall. Because we don't want it to fall out on the street. And then we can hold it together. Again, the cost is an issue. If we're going to spend money on the cost, as a developer, you want to use it to the best of your ability. So
Sure.
to go in there and spend $30,000, $40,000 putting I-beam and trying to hold it up, I don't think that's wise.
Mr. Chairman?
As far as the facade, and I did want to say this, the facade and going through the whole process, DRB, historic preservation, the whole 9 yards on that facade side, absolutely. We want all public comment, we want CCHP, we want everybody involved in that because it's a historic, and not only that, but it's a riverfront now. So we want that as an entryway into Bridge Street to be just drop dead gorgeous. I mean, I want that as an owner. So I'm looking at this as an advantage of taking this portion of the building out, which opens up that whole side and beautifying the whole side on the riverside. And there's some restraints now, and not only that, but then the road also is an issue. Again, I can't stress that enough. Yes. Also, this morning when I went over there to go take the pictures, there was almost an accident in that corner. There was a car coming out, and another one almost hit the car coming out. So it happens all the time.
Mr. Medrano, you had something?
The only thing I wanted to bring up is, I know you mentioned the highest and best use. It so happens that I might feel I use that a lot, or I do look at that, address that. And it's one of those, items that you have to really analyze because when I think about highest and best use, I think of the existing structures, what's there first and how impacts the area. So I just wanted to bring that up, the highest use you know, you mentioned that, and my, you know, my first, for my, you know, my first thing, you know, thing that comes up is that it's the way it is, you know, that's the way, you know, it falls under a historical, you know, property, and so I, you know, I'm having some problems there, you know.
Sure. I do too.
We have Mr. Martinez, if you want to come up and state your name for the record, and guess I'll swear you in. You swear to say the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. State your name for the record, please.
My name's Philip Martinez. I was just listening. I wasn't really interested in this topic, but Carlos kind of touched on it. The wall could be stabilized, but it would cost a lot of money. Like you said, you could put piers on it. You could do other things. It has a basement, so that complicates things even more. But given that, you know, I believe that if Carlos wanted to, he could actually push that wall over and make it safe with his own money, you know, if there wasn't city funds involved, I believe, you know. But the problem is the city funds and the problem it creates with the historic building. But when it's private, I think you can pretty much do almost anything you want. At the very least, I think there should be some walkways, kind of like what Mr. Burskin did on his building, because his building was, it was pretty bad. You know, it was coming down too. So I think at the very least, you know, because this could take months to actually work through, you know, with the historic people. So I don't know. It does look pretty scary, and it can be saved in that sense, like Mr. Lopez said, but it is going to cost a lot of money. So I think everybody's between a rock and a hard place, but I think that the immediate safety of the public with barricades or something should be considered, and that may not be up to this board. You know, it might be up to somebody else, the council or somebody, but at the very least, I would do that. That's all I really.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Rubio.
I got a question for you guys. I know there was a basement in there, and when that was given to West Las Vegas, before they put the ring on top, you could walk up to that wall and actually push it. So how much is that basement filling with water, and how is that affecting it?
Oh, it's been filling with water all these years. And what's happened is the roof is completely caved in,
Right.
the floor is completely caved in, and water keeps permeating down, and the foundation shows it.
And isn't there a drainage port in front of that place? I believe there is.
There might be.
An inlet?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. The thing is that all that water is affecting the next building. And that's what I think that you're alluding to, is that it does a domino effect, and we can't be hurting the next building right now, especially with the rains that we've had. And it can unstabilize the next building. The longer we wait, then that'll start to fail, then we start seeing separations over there. I mean, it can domino, and thank you for bringing that up.
The only thing I'll add also was the repair that was done originally by Franken, paid through the West Las Vegas City Schools. They attached to the south wall, and that south wall now has completely crumbled. So the bolts and the attachments are no longer attached. So you essentially have this ring, but on the back wall, because the front's a facade wall, there's really nothing to hang on to. The back wall is completely capsized, and so there's nothing holding it. I haven't gone to move it, but if it moved once, it's gonna move again. And
Mr. Burskins, can you come up here and state your name for the record? I'm going to have to swear you in as well. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank
Please
you.
state your name for the record.
My name's Frank Burskins, and my interest here really is in trying to understand the process in the historic district, and particularly with Bridge Street. First of all, I do have to comment about the highest and best use. Had I taken a rational approach towards Estella's would be in the Bridge Street. It would not be a standing building. That building was, the entire front brick facade was not even connected to the building. The primary supporting beams were broken, and it would have been a year like this with 50-mile-an-hour winds, and that brick would have been in the street. To take an economic approach to a building in a historic district like Bridge Street, which represents probably one of the greatest assets of the city itself, is a difficult path. There are no economics in the restoration of a building in bad shape in Bridge Street as a historic district. You're doing it for some other reason. And one of our reasons in taking a speculative chance at restoring a building like that is with the hopes that it serves as an example of other owners to invest in the historic property, because the only way we can get a return on investment someday, or likely our children, is if other people do the same thing to restore those buildings and increase the value of the entire district. I've been involved with CCHP on the CLG grant that got the funding for the structural engineering on the Fram building. That building likewise was red tagged. Any of us that had went in that building, there was no floor in that building. You saw daylight in the roof. That building, using the logic that we're using, that building could easily have been a breezeway today. And my interest is, I think, in working with the DRB, the COG grant that we currently have this year with the city has a consultant working with us in the next month, 2 months, to examine the historic ordinance in the city on behalf of the city, to work with the DRB board in an educational effort and a consulting effort to try to inform all of us better of how this system is supposed to work, and maybe out of that, in the future, when we're addressed with an issue like this particular building, that we will have a formal process that will be following all the same rules and the same policies. So this might serve as an example of something in the next few months that we use as a case study of what to do and what not to do in hindsight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burskins. You know, I can see the whole idea behind Mr. Lopez's proposal today. The thing that I really can't see too well is the lack of maybe educating the public by the city of Las Vegas on the process. And it sort of puts a hindrance on us here. And I'll give you an example. This is already a second meeting where I feel, and this is just my opinion, where I feel that something is brought to us prematurely. You know, we had the same scenario with the Plaza Hotel sometime back, where they want to build an outdoor patio on city right-of-way. You know, well, how can an applicant build on city right-of-way when the city right-of-way doesn't belong to them? There's a process for that, and the city did not take that process. Well, I feel that the city did not take a process on this one either. And there is a process. There is. Maybe there aren't any individuals here who are educated on the process, and that's gonna hurt decisions that have to be made before boards like this. Because, you know, some of us have had to go through the process. I was one individual who worked here quite a few years back, and I used to have to deal with the process. You know, sometime back, the Las Vegas City Schools had an issue on 4th Street, and the Frankens was involved in that. I was asked to come and help with the process. It turned out that Ms. Perea helped the schools go through it. It took about 2 years to get it done,
About a year and a half.
but the process was taken. In this case, I don't believe that the process has been taken. It's a premature way of, you know, putting a Band-Aid on an issue. And, you know, we have 3 historical districts here. We have the Railroad District, we have the Downtown Douglas District, and we have the Old Town District. And everybody that comes to Las Vegas loves the 3 districts, the fact that we have 3 districts. You could probably name a 4th district now, because you have 7th Street, Walmart, all those areas that are, it's a newer district. So we probably have 4 districts, except we monopolize on the 3 significant older districts. Well, it bothers me when I see something like this, Mr. Lopez, and no offense to you. No offense to you. I appreciate that you're applying and trying to keep your building safe from the public. But, you know, the city has had those funds already for almost 2 years. And the only reason I'm saying that is because it was mentioned today that it's being tied into that project. Well, for 2 years, the city has probably had an engineer on staff or on contract working on the whole plan. And there isn't a plan that incorporates this into it, even if you're gonna use city funds for it.
If I could, Mr. Commissioner?
Go ahead.
It was my idea to bring it to the city. It was my idea to widen that road. So it was last minute bringing it to the city and saying, as a private owner, I'm willing to donate this property if you guys want to widen the road, because I have a structure here that can't be salvaged. So I precipitated the discussion with the city, and that's why it was sort of ninth hour. And the other thing I'd ask is as a developer here, and if I am going to do a development, you're talking about a process, typically it goes to DRB, and then to DRT, and then it usually goes to city council. And sometimes they go back and forth to P and Z if it's a zoning issue.
But before that, you have the plans in place.
Well, it's a
Right now,
demolition.
right now it's-
demolition.
Well, it's a demolition.
I mean, there's no
It's a
plans to
demolition, and
demolish.
there's a plan to widen the street, and so it's not a demolition only.
The plans were produced by the city. So the municipality came up with the plans. We're coming to the DRB to follow the process. And I don't know what other process you're talking about now. If it's communication with historic preservation, I don't know what that is. You know, but typically to do this for demolition, you would be the first step. Go to DRB and then apply for a permit.
Well, it's not
And then go to
just-
city council for.
Well, it's not just demolition, and it's incorporating one project into a DOT project
Sure.
that has been going on for 2 years.
And I don't have any control of that. The city, because it was my idea, I precipitated the discussion. The city really liked the idea, along with West Las Vegas City Schools. They're on a time crunch, that's why the MOU was drafted. I don't think it's anything against you or the process. And maybe it should have gone here first before it got to city council. So we did go to city council because, again, I was just following the city's guidance on this thing, and I was working with Maria Gallery. So it landed up at city council because of the timing issue. So I don't think it's anything against this board at all. It's the timing of the DOT design. It was something I precipitated in a discussion. The historic part twist comes into play, which is legitimate. And I'm just arguing, I have a demo building essentially.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Okay.
Any other discussion before we take action on the item?
Oh, go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Tafoya.
Well, I really think I've been watching that building, I've been looking at it for a long time, and it really needs emergency repairs. I think that wall's almost to fall, You can see the ribbon all around it, it's deteriorated, it's just floating there. And I believe if it's not done soon, something's gonna happen. So I think we should approve this and let other processes continue. So we should get this done because that building is really bad.
Okay, appreciate that. Mr. Rubio.
From gathering from all this information we've been given here, the one thing that I'm seeing here is a failure of the city to take care of this man by not presenting him steps to take before he came before us. Now, if the city were to take the proper steps and then offer it to him like that, we probably wouldn't be having here. But right now, what we have is a safety issue,
Yeah.
a big safety issue. And I'm worried, and I don't want it coming down on my head that we didn't do anything about it.
Right.
And like, I agree with the commissioner there. I think we should let him do it.
Any other, Mr.
Just that, Mr. Chairman, I think, my position is when when it was transferred from the West Las Vegas Public Schools to Mr. Lopez, a private owner, there was obviously, when we purchase something, we purchase something because of either gain or some future perspective on that property. Having said that, I realize that I'm sure Mr. Lopez had some things planned on that building, and I'm sure he looked at the building when he purchased the building, the walls, the condition. However, also at the same time, we're in a dilemma. He's in a dilemma now. Does he incur those kind of costs to repair that, or what's, or the city has red tagged him? My position is, he should never have bought it, but, or maybe, that's just my position, knowing that, he was coming, get into. Now, here we are, now, months later, or, here we are, and it's now on us to decide what we're gonna do over the, do.
Anyone else? What are the wishes of the board?
I have one more question before we go any further. Are you going to keep the facade?
Yes, the west facade on Bridge Street remains.
To keep it more or less
The east facade will
historical?
come down. And there's essentially 4 different structures on this
Right.
property. So we're eliminating the east side, and there will be 3 remaining structures.
I know how that building worked because my dad worked for Joe G. Maloof, and we used to go in and play in there.
Yeah.
We'd ride the rollers.
And then just a point, will West Las Vegas still have their signage somewhere in there?
Well, there won't be any.
Will they be able to move it?
To the next one?
I when we negotiated that, I told them they can put some digital signage or something if they want, or something to that nature. So if they want to, we'll talk to them at that point. So.
You must have gotten a really good deal on that building.
Well, I don't know. Donated to the West Las Vegas City Schools, and they had to pay about $80,000 or $60,000 for Franklin to stabilize it. So,
I've seen that.
So here I bought it. I didn't pay a whole lot of money for it, but when it's all said and done, Mr. Burskin can attest to this. I'm probably going to spend $500,000 on that place, and just to get it in without the tenant improvements. It's just facade and structure, and so yeah. And the intent is to fix it, and the intent is to make it look better than it ever did in that corner.
One more question. Mr.
One more
Martinez?
question, and we're going to act on it.
Okay. Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it?
It's bad.
1 to 10?
1 to 10, I was even scared, and talking about the citizens' input, that's why I responded, because of the complaints and the people that are scared of even driving by it and walking around it and driving around it. The people are scared. That's why I acted.
Okay, what are the wishes of the board? I will, if it's okay with the board, I would like to make a recommendation on some action. I recommend that we approve the application, that we not hold it back, but with the condition that the city of Las Vegas take immediate action to follow the guidelines of the historic preservation. Because it's a very significant, it's the entryway to the old town business district coming in from the east. And with that, I open it up for a vote. So that's my recommendation with that condition. Do we have a motion?
I am.
We have a motion by Mr. Gallegos. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rubio. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Well, we're gonna have a oral, vote?
We can have an
You
oral
did?
vote if you want, it's up to
We
you.
can, but we don't need one.
You didn't go?
Nobody voted.
Nobody voted against, so you're
Against it.
fine.
Okay, any other discussion? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Rubio. We have a second by Mr. Gallegos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let the record reflect that we adjourned at 5:13.
Thank you.
5:13, you said?
5:13.
This one, Harold.
It's a mess. It's ugly.
So now